Welcome to the podcast, Asi.
Thank you, Pipin. Pleasure to be here.
How are you doing, Jeep?
Fantastic. Day 3 in Indonesia, doing absolutely wonderful.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so let's start by a brief introduction. Let's hear from you who you are, what brings you over here,
Okay.
and your journey in brief.
Okay. Ashish Bhandari. I'm the managing director and CEO of Thermax. We're based out of India, about $4 billion in market cap, deep in the energy space, working towards developing technologies that help our customers work through energy transition. Outside of India, Indonesia is one of our biggest markets. We have a plant in Indonesia, which keeps bringing me to the region as we're looking to build and continuing to grow our business out here. And on this particular trip, we held a big customer event yesterday. We had 250 plus people show up. We were exhibiting some of our newest products. Thought it was a wonderful time to be here in Indonesia.
Absolutely, it was a great event. I was privileged to be out there and witness it myself. The exhibition was great. I believe everyone took great pieces from the event, along with meeting some wonderful people. So it was absolutely fabulous. I was very intrigued hearing from Rabi and Mr. Patel and yourself yesterday about Thermax's journey in Indonesia, right? If you could give us a brief idea on what exactly Thermax does, particularly in Indonesia,
Sure.
and what's next?
Okay. I think I understand Thermax's journey in Indonesia is more than 50 years old. Yeah. So we started by selling some stuff out of India, did that for quite some time. Then in the late 90s, we started a formal office in Indonesia. And then about 7 years ago, 2017, early 2018 was when we opened our first manufacturing plant. The manufacturing plant itself, we started and then kind of COVID hit. So we went through a bit of a rough patch. And then now in the last 3 years is when we're starting to see real progress on the ground. It's not been an easy ride. It's been, we've had losses across all of that. But that's completely understood. Yeah. The reason why we are excited about Indonesia is that if I take a much longer view of the market, it's a relatively young market. The economy is growing 5% plus. It is a country which is blessed with many natural resources, which lends itself very well to the energy landscape. And in the world of the future, which is where we are talking about like biomass, advanced biofuels, waste to energy, water related solutions, clean air related solutions. We feel all of these that are strengths for Thermax are very relevant to a market like Indonesia. So we just have to take a longer look, be convinced that the products that we are bringing here are market leading and our customers are across industries. Yeah, right now the big customers are all in food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, textiles. But we are getting further and further up, getting to the bigger customers. Yesterday, there were a few cement plants that were very interested in our solutions, steel, and hopefully we start working with the government companies, PLN and Pertamina. So, but it's a journey, yeah. The first set of products that we are making out here are what we call as a heating range, which is boilers needed for power or for steam, which is needed in every process that you can think of. We're starting to make them in Indonesia. And the range of products we are bringing, we think nobody else is making them in Indonesia. If it works well, we expect this to become our gateway into the rest of Southeast Asia as well.
Perfect, amazing. And let's start with a few difficult ones.
Okay.
Right. So as you mentioned, it's not been a very smooth ride as such. Uh, what are some of the key challenges which you faced as Thermax when entering into Indonesia?
Um, I look at those challenges as not challenges, but opportunities in that sense. And the first and the biggest one was not being an established name out there. Yeah, at least in India, many other markets as well, including Africa, portions of Middle East. We are the number one player.
Sure.
Yeah, so when we knock the doors, most times customers open.
Hmm.
Yeah, when we have something new to share, people listen. That's not the case in Indonesia. Yeah, we are in some ways the new kid on the block. And then when we show up and we say this is possible, many a times we see customers scratching their heads and saying, okay, good, give me your price code. They take our price code, they use it to negotiate with people they usually buy from.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of, we were always uh, seemingly being engaged, but never being married. Yeah. So you go through that a few times, but I've seen that before. Yeah. I worked with GE for 15 years. This is something that I've seen, and all you need is patience. You need to make sure that your first set of installations, they are good. Then the word of mouth starts to go around. You give this 2 or 3 cycles, and then people come to you. And so you just need to put your head down, focus on the ball, as they say in cricket, and just let it ride for a bit. So I think that was the biggest challenge that we had. The second big challenge that we had was actually creating a reasonable supply chain out of India. Yeah, when we started out here, we started with the expectation that we could set up a supply chain in Indonesia, which would be roughly the same cost as what we had in India. And what we found was, for the longest period, it was 20 to 30% more expensive. And that is something, so if you had to make something in Indonesia and it was costing 30% more, you could overcome all taxes, everything, and still ship it out of India. And that wasn't the way we wanted things to do. So Ravi, who's now our new leader, the last year and a half, his sole focus has been taking cost out, creating a local supply chain, finding local partners, even looking at importing not from Indonesia and India, but from other countries close by where things may be cheaper. So now that gap has reduced quite substantially. Technology we always had. Here we could compete on technology with anyone. So now that some of these dots are coming into play, our ability to for customers to know us, for us to have a good cost point, and third, we are investing in services. So with these 3 things in place, we're a lot more hopeful in the future.
Expand more on the services part, because that is one area which I have seen a lot of companies struggle with, and that realization seeps in quite late. That okay, this is not just a product country wherein, hey, here's your product, and we are good, right?
I don't think there's any country out there which is a product country. Yeah, and I think I've made this statement before. There's nothing like a international market.
Yeah.
For
Yes.
Indonesia, this is their domestic.
It's an Indonesian market.
It is an Indonesian market.
True.
So you can't come in just because your home base is in Indonesia. You can't come in and say, I am international, my services will be expat.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the key to success at all. Yeah, if you have ultimately to be successful, you need to be local. Done well, services is actually profitable as well. It pays for itself. Sure. Yeah, service person going to a customer is actually solving a problem. If you're solving a problem, the customer is willing to pay for that as well. So investing in services is investing in people. It's investing in building long-term relationships with a customer. It takes a little bit of time, but what we have seen is our services business has actually been the quickest return on investment. So we just want to, takes time to train people, get them more comfortable, training them in the local language, but training them on our equipment. And that is what we are doing right now.
I think this, I mean, if there are any venture capital guys who are listening to this podcast, I believe, especially for Indonesia, they should take this as a prerequisite, that if you, even if it's a, let's say, a SaaS technology startup, which is coming into Indonesia, you got to focus on services. I completely agree with you on that. Uh, Yesterday you mentioned about Thermax being for Indonesia by Indonesians in Indonesia. On that theme, what kind of size do you have in terms of employees and more in Indonesia?
So between 150 and 200 people, 150 at our plant itself, which is close to Indonesia, close to Jakarta, depending on the traffic, an hour to 3 hours away.
Sure.
But it's a wonderful plant. And I really enjoy visiting the plant. And so far, we've been doing heating related equipment. We've just started chemicals out of the plant as well. Um, and then as these stabilize, we want to bring in other lines of equipment. We're very excited about the opportunity for water and also for clean air solutions. As Indonesia's emission norms get tighter and tighter, some of the higher end equipment that is needed is a strength for Thermax. And after the plan, now the focus is knowing in building a regional sales network and a distributor network as well. Previously, we were located largely in Java, around here. Now we are starting to place our salespeople in some of the other markets, add distributors, add service people, just starting to become more and more local in that way.
Perfect, perfect. So, I mean, that also means a massive commitment in terms of investment and bullishness on the country, right? So, purely from an economy perspective, because I'm pretty sure if a company as the size of Thermax enters into Indonesia, you look at certain parameters, right? Before you commit to that investment in the country. Uh, where do you see the overall economy going from Indonesia's perspective?
Look, I think the short term, and as I said, we came up through COVID,
Yeah.
and it wasn't an easy time, yeah. And we've invested now $25 million into the plant, which was more than what we had originally
Mm.
expected to do. Yeah. Uh, and my look is not at looking at kind of how much did Indonesia grow this year or last year, which has been quite bullish. Yeah, 5 to 6% is quite healthy. But the enthusiasm is driven by the long term opportunity that Indonesia holds. Yeah, relatively young country, access to natural resources, lot of fundamentals. Yeah, cost of labor relatively low, uh, and for the kinds of products that we make, reasonable amount of niche, but not too many domestic players as such. So if we could come in and create that capability, over time we could become the go-to name in the space. So I think that promise still holds. Whether it becomes reality or not when I come back in 2 to 3 years, I'd come a lot more often. But if we do this again in 3 years,
Sure.
I'll let you know if it worked out or not, because that portion remains to be seen. But I think a fair amount of that is not just Indonesia. It is about how we as a team execute on the ground. Yeah, the customer is the customer. We need to figure out what it takes to plan. Yeah,
Sure.
and I think we need to be nimble. We need to do it with our ears open. We need to invest in simple things like services. Also, adapt our products to the needs of the market. For example, I was sharing biomass is a big area of strength for us.
Hmm.
In Indonesia, a big portion of the market is palm.
Yes.
Yeah, and palm is a extremely cost sensitive market where traditional technologies have been like, give me the lowest. If it's okay, if it fails lot more often, but I'm okay to work it like this. The question for Thermax is, do you follow and create low end products, or do you take the customer to a higher space, a higher end? And that is what we are trying to do. So we are coming up with very innovative strategies to address the market, and I look forward to seeing how the market evolves.
Sure, sure. One common theme which I keep hearing from a lot of companies which are entering Indonesia, especially from India, is that initial comparison, very quick comparison, and they're like the market's very similar to India. Uh, I mean, quote unquote, right? The market's very similar to Indonesia, and I'm always like, I don't agree to it at all, right? Have you gone through that cycle as well? You felt it's very similar, and now it's like, no, it's not similar. What
I
something?
possibly Thamax went through a similar story, but maybe that happened before I
Good.
came in.
Okay.
Somebody made the investment decision,
Yeah.
saying load of fundamentals,
Similar, yeah.
similarities. Where I stand now, very different.
Very different markets.
And both, I mean, I talked about A is where you start, which is we are very well known in our home market. We are not here, so certainly the landscape changes, but certainly the needs of the customer, their behavior, expectations of service quality, just the breadth of Indonesia from
Correct.
India is a big country as well, but the breadth in terms of the number of islands, the very different approach people have towards equipment, etc. It's just completely different.
Completely different, right?
Yeah.
But okay, fair enough. But I mean, on the other side, purely from sustainability goals and environmental preservation perspective, uh, I'm pretty sure that India is slightly ahead in the curve compared to Indonesia. Do you think there are certain lessons which can be just, for the lack of better word, copy pasted out here,
Yeah.
and it will work?
So I'll share it in three parts.
Sure.
First is yes, there are some technologies, some things that are in the money right now. Yeah. And they require people to be aware that this exists and is possible, and then to adopt, implement, and do that. There, I think some of the bits that I talked about exist, and these are primarily around biomass, waste to energy, waste heat recovery, bringing all of these. These are like relatively quick paybacks, help you achieve sustainability goals, and also makes money. Yeah, so that's one set of solutions. The second is things that are in the money but require policy support and require some amount of ecosystem to be created. I think this is where Indonesia can get better in the way, and I'll use the word get better because um, many countries, including India, have taken big steps forward to allow some of these new technologies to come in, especially on the renewable side, by taking steps to disaggregate what was previously the realm of public utilities, so to say. Yeah, and in Indonesia, electricity power is managed very, very centrally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in a coordinated fashion. But that coordinated fashion comes with its own challenges.
True.
Yeah, India has separated the grid from the power producer.
Yes.
The grid is supposed to manage the grid. It's like a road. Anyone can use the road. You just pay a toll fee. And that allows all the tolls that come in, allows the road operator to invest in improving the infrastructure. So, which India has done a very, very good job. And by disaggregating, it has allowed renewable power to thrive, absolutely thrive, to the point that India is now on track to cross 20 gigawatts a year of renewable power, with a goal of 30 gigawatts a year. Um, Things like these, which are hand in hand. And you can have similar stories like Indonesia has done stuff on biodiesel. They can look at ethanol and starting a whole biopetrol business as well. So there are similarly such sets of opportunities that are in the money but require policy decision. The third are ideas that are not in the money, but these are all options you need to pay for the future. And these are around hydrogen, advanced biofuels, which is lot stuff for the future. Um, but I think it is important for a country like Indonesia because, in my view, for a country to grow, and I've shared this previously also, if you have to grow 8%, which means your energy growth will be in double digits. And if you have to think about growing energy double digits, you can't rely on what costs you here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think beyond coal. And if you have to think beyond coal, then you have to start playing with some of these new things. And what I had said yesterday is you need to go to school, as a country. Yeah, you need to go get your degrees, invest some amount as part of that, and which is really, really needed to become competitive for the future.
Sure.
And in the region, I think Indonesia has a real opportunity to be a leader, especially given its strength in the mining sector, access to natural resources, etc. Indonesia can be a leader in the energy space.
Sure. Let's get on to more slightly more personal side.
Sure.
Right. So you mentioned Thermax is doing about $4 billion
In market cap, we're about billion, 2 billion revenue.
Perfect. What does it take uh, for one to become a leader uh, who's managing this large a company? What are some key traits? I don't want to put you in an awkward position, but if you just step out and if you have to evaluate, what are some key traits which are like prerequisites of sorts?
Look, one, when you're in the well, it's tough to pull yourself out here to say, yeah, these are the key traits, and I'm still very much in the game and be able to talk about how the game should be played. But I'll use this to just reflect on first, fair bit of luck and serendipity. When you start your career, you don't think you will end up here. You don't know. And anybody that comes and says, what do you want to be in 20 years from now? Is asking the wrong question anyway, because most of us don't know where we will be 20 years from now. So you can't think that long. But what can I say? Look, I think one, figure out kind of something you're really good at and look to become even better. Yeah. And it took me a while to figure out what that meant for me. But over time, I love B2B industrial businesses, and I've seen them from all portions, from manufacturing, sales, running distributor networks, international product development, product management. And a lot of it happened by luck, but each one kind of gave me an idea about a different portion of the elephant. So it feels like I know the elephant somewhat well. Second, at least for me, look at things from the point of view of nothing will be perfect. Life is not supposed to be perfect and will never be perfect. All you can do is, am I making it better? And if you are, then you take strength in that, because if you're looking for perfection every day, that's not going to come. We make mistakes constantly. I make mistakes constantly. I know as a team, we don't always come through on our businesses, on to our customers. Not everything's as shiny and bright as it needs to be. We were talking about Indonesia. We thought the plant would break even 3 years before that it did. Shit happens. You just learn from it and you move forward. Third thing, especially, and perhaps the most important thing, especially at Thermax, is to have empathy when it comes to people and to lead. Leadership at Thermax is not just about kind of saying this is the way or to go about, but how do you take people along? The breadth that it has, the legacy that it has. So to have to drive change, we're not a ship you're not a startup that you wake up tomorrow and say, this is a culture that I want, and this is what I want to do.
It doesn't work over there either.
But at least there, you're like 12 people, you're the founder, you can do that. Yeah, we are 8,000 plus people going in some directions that you have to drive change. You have to do it with a lot of communication, bringing people along. So you need to enjoy that part as well. And I really enjoy that part.
So this is awesome. So I've been writing a fairly large blog. I haven't published it yet. It's basically about luck versus hard work, right? And how much is luck and how much is hard work when it comes to measuring success as such. And the more I was researching, uh, it came across to me that luck is downplayed very heavily. I mean, the fact that you're born in a certain city at in a certain year has such massive impact on what you turn out to be in terms of your career and its relevance to your success. It's very high. I'm glad we spoke about luck and uh, success comparison out here. What about health, right? And I'm talking about maintaining your sanity, which is more on the mental health side. And I'm pretty sure it's physically demanding also, right? I mean, especially if you're a leader at that scale, which means a lot of travel, it means longer hours, right? How do you view that? How do you view the balance? Uh, and some tips.
Health for me is extremely important. For me, physical and health, they're all bundled in. I'll take the physical one first. I work out, and for me, workout has now become running more than anything. I carry my shoes almost not almost, everywhere I go. I, in fact, find it easier to exercise when I'm traveling than otherwise. I'd sleep on the plane if need be, but almost every hotel has a gym. I use that as an opportunity to run.
You're a with headphones or without headphones runner?
Both. If there's good sport on, then I'm with headphones.
Okay.
If there's no sport on, then without. I prefer running outside,
Sure.
but that's not always possible. So I've just trained myself to run in the gym. Yeah, but if it's a good city, one of my most favorite runs we had a plant when I was with GE, was in Germany, in close to Munich. And I would go running there regularly. The English Garden out there was just my favorite place to run anywhere. So believe a lot in that. And over time, I've seen that being physically fit helps me manage my travel fairly well. I can still wake up for a flight at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, have a punishing schedule at times. And I feel like in 20 years, nothing has changed in that sense. The other part on mental health, I think, helps to never take yourself too seriously. And as I said, if you look at the glass always as half full, it'll never be completely full. Gives you the opportunity to say, okay, how do I make this better? But that thing keeps me sane. It doesn't mean that I don't lose my temper. It happens, but not that frequently. Plus, I enjoy what I do, so that helps. And I've had a balanced life otherwise, loving parents, kids, family, a wife who supported me through thick and thin. She's the one you need to ask the question on mental health. I think I've been quite fortunate.
But it reflects a mindset, because I mean, what you're saying, it's philosophical as well as it's a mindset aspect of it. But in some cases, the mindset is developed over a period of time with experiences and more. In some cases, you've identified that this is the mindset which I need to inculcate, and you enforce it upon you, and slowly it becomes a character. So in your case, it's been the latter, is it? I mean,
I think maybe it came about, some part always was ready for that. Some part initially, especially when I was in the US, kind of left McKinsey very quickly to go do a startup. Startup didn't work, and kind of, when you get your head knocked around a few times, you have a little one at home, and kind of then all that stress. And then you realize that happiness doesn't come from just running fast. It comes from many, many small things. And then that kind of calms you down. And maybe in some ways your mind's ready for that as well.
Sure, sure, sure. So you into meditation or anything like that?
Nothing. I would hope to do. It's not like somebody said, meditate, lie down, just deep breathe. I could do that
Sure.
easily, but not particularly. For me, my running's my meditation in a way.
Or whatever works.
Whatever.
Whatever works. How about books?
Love
Book?
reading.
Love reading?
Love reading.
What are you reading now?
So, I mean, just sharing, I've been reading, I do a blog as well, monthly for within Thermax. I share some of the books that I read. The last couple that I have been reading have all been in the space of AI. But in the last year, I think really enjoyed Musk's biography. I think Isaacson's my favorite biographer, but really enjoyed. And some of these people are just so complex that putting them in one box doesn't do service to the individual. But I think it was very, very well done. I've been reading a lot about kind of origins of human intelligence and kind of how different it is from AI evolving, and the future is anybody's guess right now.
I think Nexus also covered quite a bit. Yuval Noah Harari.
That's right. Yeah. Of course.
I think it was a pretty interesting read as well. Any recommendations for our viewers?
Recommendations for viewers. Look, I'll give you a recommendation at least. I think if they're fans of history out there, and because it's a podcast, William Drumpel, he does a one called Empire.
The Empire. Oh, it's one of my favorites.
It is. I love because when I'm traveling, I can listen to it. I've been a history buff, so I've been following them for now year plus.
Yeah,
and I've covered practically most of the world's history. Just enjoying those stories as I'm traveling. So that's one that I would recommend to anybody. Yeah.
So definitely, I mean, and some of the insights which come out of the Empire, it's so mind-boggling. I'm like,
so much of
how
still holding true. Yeah, what's happening in the Middle East, Russia and Ukraine, and many of us who grew up in India, I think what India is going through right now. And sometimes the history books don't really tell you everything.
They don't. Perfect. Parting thoughts.
Yeah.
Where do you see? I know it's a very stereotyped question.
Okay.
But where would you like to see Thermax in Indonesia? Let's say by the end of the decade.
End of the decade. I think that's
a short term.
No, it's fantastic. I think because that's short enough that we could take. I think 3 things. One, I would love for it to be, and just because it's 3 years, 5 years, I would say just a bigger, profitable, multi-business, multi-product line for Thermax. Yeah. So I want it to be fully established center, like in India, we call, banyan trees, or in Southeast Asia. Banyan trees have, after a bit, don't have just one main trunk.
Yeah.
They just start to seed trunks. I want, like Indonesia, by that time, to be a trunk of its own. Yeah. That is the first part, which is numbers and everything else. The second one is actually deeper and more important. I would love for Thermax to be relevant to energy transition and energy growth in Indonesia. Yeah, which means it's making a real difference on the ground, working with companies, delivering things, doing all of that. Yeah, and third, of course, as we start to go into the next 5 years, 10 years, I hope eventually this can actually become a source of innovation as well, as it takes some of the best practices, things that happen around here, and then we are able to feed it back into India, globally, to our plants in Europe, wherever it may be. Yeah, so I don't know where that future will look like. But I think that the final bit, which is where you're able to work with local universities, R&D centers, make this a place where we are actually experimenting new things, doing all of that. And I think if we, all three of these would help us really stand out in the local marketplace. Um, I think the first two are definitely doable in the first 5 years, and I would expect that. The third one would be the icing on the cake.
Perfect. Wishing you success and wishing you luck. It was really a pleasure speaking.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.